right. Let's see. Should be live on all of them now. And so just want to kind of welcome y'all in. Those that are tuning in, I appreciate y'all hopping on. Tonight, we're going to go through that, and really I'm going to be answering questions. One of the questions that came through in the Ask the Coach, and it's about LSU football, Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin, and leadership. So want to kind of be clear on this, that I'm not going to be answering this kind of as an LSU football fan, okay? Answering this more so as a former coach, a leadership coach, so not a fan. Fans debate wins, leaders diagnose systems. And LSU football just happens to be the case study in the leadership conversation that I'm using, okay? And so the question that I was asked that I'm going to be addressing, I'll pull it up real quick. It says, as a leadership coach and former football coach, what are your thoughts on LSU football and our new head coach, Lane Kiffin, longtime Tiger fan, and hoping that Kiffin can turn around our program and get us back to our former glory? Seems to me that our biggest problem under the Brian Kelly era stemmed from leadership. And so I'm going to be going over and addressing that. And the three topics that I'll be hitting with that, or three lenses as I'm going to call them through here, that is first, when the same problem shows up year after year. Second, how pressure reveals culture more than talent ever will. And what actually changes a program. And this is regardless of whoever the coach is. And so if you're looking for rumors, hot takes, that this probably isn't it. But if you're leading a team and seeing the same issues repeat, this will hit pretty close to home. And so, yeah, appreciate you guys jumping in. I see a bunch of y'all coming in that on TikTok, and then there's several coming through here on Facebook and YouTube. They welcome. Like I said, just letting y'all know this is coming. I'm looking at this from a former coach and leadership coach. And so let's start with the first lens that I'd said. And so, why did the same problem show up year after year? Now remember, it's not a talent problem, especially somewhere like LSU. It's a leadership structure problem. And so one thing that winning programs don't rely on, and I'm not just going to say winning programs, but winning cultures, winning businesses, they fill it in churches, whatever you decide to go, that they don't rely on charisma. So want to be clear on that. That doesn't matter how charismatic the leader of the organization is, or in this case, or the leader of the football team, that it comes down to, do you have clear standards set? That do you have something that's going to hold your players accountable? That since we are talking LSU football, and are there consistent consequences? Okay. And so one thing, that you look for as a leader, that is patterns. They were not looking for excuses. And so if you do see that, and for anybody, if you are dropping questions and I don't get to them, I apologize, trying to work through two screens right here, because I could not get TikTok to set up that to my Riverside app, which is what I use for for my podcast. And so one thing to really keep in mind, though, is with that when you start seeing those things come over and over and over again, if the same problem shows up, it's a leadership problem. It's not a talent problem. It's not anything it's not play calling. It is 100% the leader of your organization. So if you're leading, like I was saying, a church, if you're leading a business, if you're an entrepreneur by yourself, leading your family, if you start seeing these problems show up over and over again, repetition is never accidental. It's never accidental. Had a former coach, and this has always kind of been my thing, that is that if You see something happening. It's either one, being coached that way, or two, it's being allowed to happen. Either way, that falls on the leader. And so stop looking for those excuses that leadership isn't about personality, it's about alignment. So you've got to create these systems that it comes. So that's point number one. Point number two, or lens number two, that the second lens is going to build on that because when talent is high, that pressure is what tells the truth. Pressure doesn't create problems. That it reveals the culture that's already there. And so why you see culture show up in tight games. So if you're just taking something like LSU football, that when they're playing no name state university, for the most part, you see somebody like LSU that, and you could pick any other that top tier Division One or Power Five program. They tend to beat that D2, that D3 school, no issues. But when you get into those big games, the tight games, where somebody like an LSU plays somebody like an Ole Miss, then Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma, when you pick up one of those big teams, this is when you really get to see that what exactly the culture is at a program. Okay. And so when you start seeing that those needless penalties, that when you start seeing poor body language, what I mean poor body language, you see the talking back with the coaches, you see arguing with the referees, when you see them like pushing and shoving after the play, like those are problems that exposes what the culture is. It reveals that character. It doesn't build it, it reveals it. And so if you're waiting for something to happen in a big game to see is this person the right person or not, it's going to happen in that big game. Okay. You'll see it right away and you'll notice it. And so examples that you saw throughout the season with LSU, you saw that you'd get into a late situation or making a big drive, false start. So now instead of it being second and short, they're in second and long. You'd see a holding penalty on a big play. This is where you'd see a defensive player that jump off sides or make an unnecessary pass interference. You see unnecessary timeouts. You see that time and time and again, in a team where there is a lack of leadership. And again, you can apply this. Take this to wherever you want to take this. That it could be at your business. It could be where you work. It could be an organization you're with, church, that BNI group, Rotary Club, Masons, fill it in. I mean, there's tons of organizations out there that are 100, and everything rises and falls on leadership. So I told y'all that's going to be one of my main points throughout here is that everything rises and falls on leadership. And that's where we were in the Brian Kelly era of LSU. And you can tell one of the things that I thought was a telltale sign of that what happened in that era. And so as a coach who has, or a former coach, every time I left an organization, and this is not to hey, good job, Aaron. This is one of those things that's the truth. When you leave an organization, if your team isn't legitimately upset with like, hey, you're leaving, we're sad to see you go, so on and so forth, like, were you really making a positive impact on that team or on those players? We can go back, since we're talking LSU football, go back. Nick Saban left. So we're going all the way back to 2005. That when he left, that the players were upset, but they were proud of him. That because he was going on to the NFL, he was going and coaching at the NFL, right? And so who wouldn't be excited for their coach going on to do bigger and better things? So you got Les Miles that came in. And again, we're not here to debate on whether you like these coaches or not. It's just a who came in next. When Les Miles, and I would personal, when you looked at what Les Miles did, they all but 1 year or maybe 2 years of 10+ win seasons, that the guy knew how to win. And whenever he was let go from LSU, the players were devastated because they loved him. That you bring in next, Coach O. Again, players loved him. Coach O got himself in a little bit of trouble, so they got rid of him. And then you move into that what was Brian Kelly's era, and that when it was announced that he was no longer on the team, nobody was upset. And so it really goes through right there when the pressure doesn't create the problems, it reveals the culture. And you got to see that right there in that it didn't stop with just that the coach. You saw it boil over into the players, and especially in that last game that he'd coached. So this then brings me to our third lens. So first lens was repetition. This equals your structure. So whenever you see it, it's not based off of leadership. Two, that pressure reveals the culture. And then the transitioning into the lens number three. And this is where most fans and people in general miss the mark. Because programs don't change when a new coach arrives. They change when a new system takes root. And so, will Coach Kiffin be successful? I don't know. H. Hasselbeck, how do you deal with people being in leadership role who doesn't see you as a leader and may pull? Great question. I'm definitely I'll take a second to get to some of those, and that may even be a good one for me to put in my Ask the Coach series. Real good question. But on talking about with Coach Kiffin, will he be successful? I don't know. I hope so. I honestly hope all coaches are successful. It's a tough job being on TV every single day and not when you don't win. But it's only successful depending on the system that Coach Kiffin sets up. He builds the leadership depth. His main job is to coach the coaches that are on his staff. And so was very fortunate enough to have been on coaching staffs. That I played on under two Louisiana High School Hall of Fame football coaches, under Hank Tierney and Bob Becknell. Coach Hank is still coaching. Actually did an excellent episode recording with Coach Becknell that will be going up on the podcast a little bit later in 2026. But a lot of time people come in, you bring in the fancy new program. You bring in the fancy new, hey, he scored 100 million points at this college. Imagine what he'll do at somewhere like LSU. And so this is, again, where you have to be careful because we don't rise to the level of our expectations or our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And this is where the leader is what makes things happen. This is where as the leader, you set the culture and the goal for your organization. And if you don't put in the proper systems, and this could be something because we're talking with football, how do the team meetings go? How do you show up to workouts? What happens if you are late to a workout? What happens if you're late to a practice? What happens if you miss? Having all of these clear-cut things set out that makes it to where they know what to expect. And having those simple expectations and those simple systems in place, that it makes it so much easier for you as a leader. And this again, guys, it goes right into excuse me, what we want to do, and I can take this to wherever, as a leadership coach and as a former football coach, or as I like to say, the recovering football coach. you've got to have all those structures in place. And you can take, and what I love about football, because you can take the same principles and apply it to business. You can apply it to pick your business, whatever you want. They apply it to whatever organization you're in. You can apply it wherever you want to apply it. Okay. And so it really does go through, and they, like I was saying, it reveals the character of the organization. So you can apply it to church, you can apply it to business, work, whatever. And so, I mean, this is one that I'll tell you guys, because this is what I do. This is exactly what I do. I work with leaders who are tired of repeating the same problems over and over again. So on January 20th, I am going to have a mastermind focused on leadership and building systems. It's not about motivation. It's about structure. It's actually being able to hold you accountable and what happens when pressure. So, if that's something that you want to do, look, hit me up. You can DM me, put it in the comments. I would love to be able to help you with that. And so, in closing, this is why leadership isn't a motivational problem. It's a system problem. When the same mistake is being repeated, chances are something is being tolerated. That when pressure exposes cracks, the culture has not been trained properly for stress. And when everything depends on the person at the top, the system is too thin to last. It's true in football. It's true in business. It's true everywhere leadership matters. And so if you're leading a team and see the same issues over and over and over, that the answer isn't a new speech. It isn't a new hire. It's in a better leadership system. And so I appreciate this question being asked. If you want more answered through the leadership lens, that you can submit them through my Ask the Coach form. I do have it tied into that for those of you that are on TikTok. It is at the top of my page, and I do leave on Facebook and YouTube. I have it tied into there. That simple Google form. It's on every single one of the podcasts, so you can get it there. So that's leadership, and we'll talk again soon.